47 seconds, that's all it took. Not a lifetime, not a year, not even a full minute. Just 47 ticking fragments of time under the blinding, unforgiving lights of a live congressional hearing for Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett to bring two titans, billionaire CEO Elon Musk and U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi, to a dead, echoing silence. She didn't need to raise her voice. She didn't need theatrics. She simply raised the truth, stark and undeniable. $38 million in taxpayer funds, funneled, diverted, used to mute human screams inside the gleaming, supposedly futuristic Tesla factories. What kind of justice system, the world would soon ask, pays to silence pain? And who, finally, dared to make it loud? The video had no title. Just a black screen, a timestamp, and the chilling sound of metal groaning under fluorescent lights. Then, a sudden, violent jolt, a shaky phone recording, captured in the suffocating heat of a Tesla gigafactory somewhere outside Austin. The frame was raw, unfiltered, a window into a nightmare. A man in a gray jumpsuit stumbled near the battery line, his boots slick on the sweat pooling at his feet. He reached desperately for a switch, but his body betrayed him. He crumpled, a marionette with severed strings, before he could reach it. The cold, hard floor offered no mercy. He slammed against it with a sickening thud, a sound that would soon reverberate across a nation. Then the screaming began. Not yelling, not cries of alarm, but pure, primal screaming. A woman's voice, sharp and terrified. "Get help! He's seizing!" Another, frantic. "Call someone!" A third, choked with terror. "Water, please! He's not breathing!" But those screams, raw and desperate, didn't summon security. They summoned the system. In the top right corner of the screen, a red box blinked ominously. Disruption flag. Threat level 2. Facial recognition software, cold and impartial, scanned every worker who dared to raise their voice. A green light blinked above one woman's head. Subject flag, disruptive behavior, recommend internal discipline. Then the camera froze. Not a glitch, not a buffering error, but a deliberate digital halt, enforced by Tesla's internal AI review protocol. That was the last frame. The screen went black. And the words appeared, the noise. Below it, a label, date, March 8th, 2025. Jasmine Crockett watched the clip twice. The first time, her mouth was a tight, grim line. The second, her fists were clenched, white-knuckled. She didn't flinch when the man hit the floor. It was when the system punished the ones who screamed that her fingers curled into weapons. Her staffers, pale-faced and hushed, inched forward around the briefing table. "Ma'am, where did this come from?" Crockett opened the folder that had accompanied the flash drive. Inside, a note, scribbled in shaky, defiant cursive. "They call it noise. We call it life." Below it, a list of 10 names, former Tesla employees, 3 arrested during protests, 2 deported, 1 deceased. A junior aide, voice barely a whisper, murmured, "That's not a video leak. That's a confession." Jasmine didn't say a word. She pushed the flash drive back into its case and opened her laptop. Her fingers moved fast, keyboard strokes like gunfire. Congressional motion 253207. Request to summon Elon Musk and U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi to testify under oath regarding federal protections, AI labor monitoring, and DOJ contracts involving corporate surveillance. The system flagged the motion as high profile. Expected response time, 3 to 5 days. Jasmine wasn't waiting. She clicked submit at 2:14 a.m., then turned to her comms director. "Give me a seat on MSNBC at noon. No script. I'm not backing down." 2 hours later, the world woke up to her tweet. If the DOJ and Tesla spent $38 million to silence human pain, then they should both prepare to answer to the people on live television. At 9:17 a.m., Pam Bondi appeared on Fox News, her voice calm, deliberate, her smile cold, almost predatory. Congresswoman Crockett is free to grandstand, but if she wants to pick a fight with national security and private innovation, she should tread very carefully. The warning hit every news banner. CNN called it a shot fired across the political floor. Twitter called it something else entirely. Noise is pain. By sundown, over 11 million views had played the clip of the man collapsing in the Tesla factory. Not a single government agency had responded. But Jasmine Crockett wasn't waiting for permission to tell the truth. She was building a case, televised in real time, and every frame would be evidence.
The world had woken up to a tweet, but by noon, it was watching a fire. Jasmine Crockett was live on MSNBC, sitting upright beneath hard studio lights that usually soften the edges of political theater. Her tone wasn't theatrical. It was composed. Too composed for the storm that visibly raged behind her eyes. She looked into the camera not like a politician addressing an audience, but like a prophet looking through glass, directly into the soul of a nation. "Let me make this clear," she began, her voice a quiet hammer blow. "I don't threaten billionaires. I expose them. And if the truth makes them nervous, then maybe they're not as clean as they claim." She leaned forward, just enough to blur the lines between camera and conviction, between the screen and the raw, unyielding force of her will. "I won't be treading carefully. I'll be stepping forward, loud, clear, and backed by 38 million reasons to be angry." The host blinked. The nation roared. Within an hour, Stand with Crockett flooded timelines from D.C. to Dallas. Then came Tread This, followed by 38 million reasons. A mural artist in Detroit spray-painted her quote in blood red across a factory wall. A civil rights lawyer in Oakland posted a screenshot with a caption that resonated like a bell. "This is the line in the sand. Pick a side." Meanwhile, Pam Bondi's press office issued silence. Elon Musk tweeted a cryptic sentence about distractions from innovation and logged off, retreating into the digital ether. But the crowd wasn't watching them anymore. The lens had shifted. The people had chosen where to look, and they were looking straight at Jasmine. She wasn't performing. She was prosecuting, not in a courtroom, but in the unforgiving court of public trust. The evidence was already on the table. The question now was, who would try to bury it? Public service wasn't supposed to mean protecting billionaires from accountability. But somewhere along the line, silence had become a job requirement. And Jasmine, she didn't come to Congress to whisper. So if power needed a muzzle to stay comfortable, maybe it was time someone kicked the door in and asked, "Who exactly are you serving when your first instinct is to warn the truth to be quiet?" The clip hadn't stopped playing. It was still looping on Jasmine Crockett's monitor. Pam Bondi's smooth, cold voice warning her to tread carefully. Outside her office window, Washington looked unchanged, as if the threat hadn't just echoed across every screen in the country. But inside, something had irrevocably shifted. Jasmine didn't pace, she didn't yell. She reached for her calendar like a general picking a battlefield. "I want Friday morning," she said flatly. Her staff paused. "That's the national broadcast slot. CNN, MSNBC, C-SPAN, Fox, they all go live at 9 a.m. "Exactly," Jasmine said. "That's when they'll see it." She didn't mean the committee hearing. She meant the reckoning. Within an hour, her office submitted a formal scheduling request to the Oversight Committee. She asked for the first seat of the day, prime hour, all cameras locked, no interruptions, no backbenchers before her. Not this time. Word spread fast. Elon Musk's legal team filed an objection by midnight, citing concerns over public staging. They requested a private session, or, at minimum, a delayed broadcast. Bondi's office tried to push the date 2 weeks forward, claiming executive obligations. Jasmine responded with one sentence, delivered through her chief of staff like a precision strike. "The people this affects don't get to delay pain, so you don't get to delay the truth." Behind closed doors, tempers flared.
One committee member warned her, "You're playing with giants." She didn't flinch. She replied, "Good. Giants fall harder when they forget who they're standing on." By Tuesday morning, the oversight chair confirmed it. Her time slot was locked. Jasmine Crockett would lead off the hearing at 9 a.m. sharp, live on every major network. A single name on the roster, 2 witnesses under subpoena, one question echoing across the Capitol. What happens when a Congresswoman walks straight into the line of fire and dares it to blink? The hearing room began to buzz days in advance. Reporters started camping outside the chamber like it was a trial, not an inquiry. Staffers rehearsed opening statements in back hallways. Meanwhile, Jasmine stayed quiet. No press releases, no teasers, just silence and preparation. She wasn't just building a case, she was building an event. Every word, every file, every clip from that factory floor had to land like a nail through marble. This wasn't politics. This was prosecution in the full light of day. Across the country, anticipation built like storm clouds behind headlines. Crockett versus Musk, truth on trial. Jasmine versus the machine. Supercuts of her MSNBC response ran on TikTok with millions of views. Protest groups began organizing watch parties for justice in libraries, campuses, union halls. By Thursday night, a CNN anchor asked the question no one dared say out loud. Has the Department of Justice become a shield for billionaires, and will this hearing finally crack it open? And on the morning of the hearing, the Capitol steps were lined with silent crowds. No chants, no signs, just people standing still, waiting. Inside, the lights came on. The cameras went live. Jasmine Crockett sat down at her mic, adjusted the stack of folders in front of her, and said nothing. Because she knew the silence would do more work than a headline ever could. What happens when the entire country is watching and the truth finally steps into the frame?
At exactly 9 a.m., 3 red lights on 3 cameras blinked in sync. CNN, MSNBC, Fox News. The Capitol hearing room didn't just light up, it detonated. Every network cut to the same shot. One long wooden table, 2 seats filled, 1 seat empty. Elon Musk sat on the left, wearing a tailored navy suit that fit like armor. His fingers tapped soundlessly on the table, a nervous rhythm, but his eyes wouldn't stop flicking toward the door. Pam Bondi was beside him, her posture ramrod straight, her lips thin, a carefully constructed mask. She wore white, pristine and polished, as if justice were something that could be dry-cleaned. They were both under oath, the placards in front of them reading their names in black block font. But no one was looking at the placards. They were waiting for her. At 9:02, the door opened. Jasmine Crockett stepped in, slow and certain, her heels clicking like a countdown on marble. She wore a simple black blazer, no brooch, no theatrics, just an undeniable presence. Her expression didn't shift when the camera zoomed in. She didn't nod, didn't smile. She sat down, adjusted the mic, opened a thin red folder, and tapped once on her tablet. The room didn't hear her voice. It heard a scream. 7 seconds of raw audio filled the chamber. One long, ragged scream from the Tesla factory floor. No words, just the kind of primal human sound that made people freeze in place. Then silence. Then the scream again. And once more. 3 times, uninterrupted, undeniable. No one moved, not the press, not the aides, not even the witnesses. Musk's jaw twitched. Bondi blinked slowly, but said nothing. The room felt like it had tilted, as if the entire Capitol had leaned forward in its seat. Jasmine let the silence settle, heavy and suffocating, before she spoke. She didn't clear her throat, didn't preface, just leaned into the mic, her voice low and deliberate. That was not a sound effect. That was not from a movie. That was from a real human being, recorded inside a Tesla facility in Texas after 13 hours on the line. No union, no break, no one came when they screamed. She looked directly at Musk, then at Bondi. You both knew. You called it noise. The screen behind her flickered on. A still frame from the video, time-stamped, unedited, burned into the screen. A worker on the ground. 2 more running. And in the top corner, a red tag blinking. Disruption flagged. Recommend removal. Jasmine let the image speak for itself. Then she turned back to the room. This isn't about a factory. It's about a system. It's about what happens when billionaires build machines to ignore pain, and government helps them write the silence into law. A low murmur spread across the room. One of the reporters dropped their pen. A staffer near the back visibly wiped a tear. Jasmine didn't flinch. So I ask again, for the record, for the country, for every person watching right now, how do you justify ignoring the sound of someone pleading for help? The image of the collapsed worker still glowed behind her, frozen in time. Jasmine didn't look at it. She looked straight ahead, voice low and deliberate. General Bondi, in your DOJ budget memo, what does the phrase noise mitigation protocol mean? The words landed like a dropped gavel. Bondi's fingers tensed on the table. Her lips moved, but no sound followed for a full second. Elon Musk shifted in his seat beside her, shoulders tightening. Bondi cleared her throat. That phrase refers to public communications response efforts to disinformation campaigns. It's designed to maintain trust during times of unrest. Jasmine tilted her head, her tone untouched by the tension hanging in the room. Who defines what unrest looks like, General? And more importantly, who benefits from defining it? The chamber was silent again. Bondi hesitated, glanced at her binder, and said it was determined by internal DOJ compliance assessments. Jasmine nodded, then reached beneath her folder and slid a second file across the table. Let's talk about Exhibit 4. $38 million were transferred to a vendor called Public Affairs Management Solutions. This happened in February, signed and cleared within 9 days. No competitive bidding, no oversight review. She stood, walking slowly toward the projection screen. The firm has 2 listed executives. One, an ex-DOJ communications officer, the other. Jasmine turned toward Elon Musk, a senior vice president at X Corp. A murmur rippled through the chamber. One senator lowered her pen mid-scribble. The camera caught Musk blinking hard, jaw locked, lips pressed thin. Bondi sat like stone. Jasmine didn't raise her voice. She just kept going. So while Tesla workers were collapsing from heat and overwork, and while Tesla's screams were flagged by AI as disruptive, your department funneled taxpayer money to a company run by someone sitting right next to you. This wasn't accidental. It was coordinated. Not silence, but engineered silence. The screen behind her switched to a copy of the DOJ contract. Red lines, approval initials, dates. Jasmine pointed at the bottom of the page. Authorization, Pamela J. Bondi. Another beat of silence passed. Bondi opened her mouth but didn't speak. Jasmine returned to her seat, stacked her folders, and faced the room again. So I'll ask the question one more time for the public record. What is noise, General Bondi? Is it the sound of an exhausted man hitting the floor? Is it a woman begging for someone to stop the line? Or is it just truth you haven't found a cleaner way to bury? Neither Bondi nor Musk moved. The cameras zoomed in tight on faces that had run out of places to hide, because sometimes what they called noise was just pain they couldn't profit from. The contract on the screen still pulsed in the air, Bondi's signature glowing under congressional lights like a fingerprint left at the scene. Jasmine didn't press it further. She didn't need to. She reached into her folder and pulled out something small, unlabeled, metallic, silent. She held it between her thumb and forefinger just long enough for the cameras to focus. USB number 14. No stamp, no chain of custody. Just one item slipped under her office door 3 nights ago in a plain envelope that read, "This wasn't redacted. It was erased." She inserted it into the panel without another word. The screen behind her lit up again. No logos, no opening credits, just a dark room and a shaky recording angled from under a conference table. 4 people seated,
blazers, DOJ insignia, a pot of stale coffee in the corner. The timestamp blinked. March the 3rd. A voice began to speak. Deep, male, clipped. We need to stabilize narrative perception around Tesla unrest. If this gets framed as systemic neglect, we'll have a national labor situation on our hands. The press cycle needs redirecting. 48 hours max. Another voice answered, female, recognizable. We've already flagged sympathetic outlets. Once Pam Solutions launches the first push, we'll coordinate cross-agency silence. No official comment means no official blame. Jasmine didn't move. Neither did the room. The screen shifted to a still image, a PDF titled Mitigation Memo, Tier 2 Targets. A bulleted list followed. Jasmine read it aloud. University labor groups, minority-led advocacy pages, worker-run Tesla forums, Crockett, J, monitoring priority. She stopped there, then zoomed in on the bottom of the memo. One line in neat typed font. Final authorization, P.J. Bondi's signature sat like a stain. The camera cut to her face. She didn't blink. Musk sat straighter, but his expression had cracked. What had started as defensiveness now looked like fear. Jasmine turned back to the microphone. This wasn't oversight. This wasn't a miscommunication. This was a coordinated campaign to suppress the very people our justice system is supposed to protect. She tapped the document still frozen on the screen. They didn't ask how to help the workers. They asked how to kill the story. The crowd outside the hearing chamber was silent, but the live-streamed chat across news networks exploded. Comments flew. Phones buzzed in offices and classrooms. America leaned closer. Jasmine stepped back once, then leaned in for the final question. What if justice wasn't blind? What if it was auctioned, one scream at a time? And what if someone finally found the receipt? The document on the screen had barely faded when the next name was called. Jasmine didn't need to look down at the roster. She knew who was coming.
He walked slowly, not because he was nervous, but because the weight of what he carried didn't allow for quick steps. Malik Hayes, age 29, former Tesla line technician. No criminal record, no priors, no political history, just a man with a job, a voice, and a tweet that changed everything. He took the oath with steady hands, though his eyes betrayed something deeper, something still raw. Jasmine nodded once. He nodded back. The chamber waited, holding its collective breath. 6 months ago, Malik said, his voice quiet but clear, I worked 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week at the Fremont plant. I'd seen co-workers pass out. I'd seen injuries ignored. We were told to keep our heads down, so I did, until I didn't. He paused, looked toward the committee, then continued. I posted 7 words on Twitter. We deserve better. We're not machines. The next morning, his keycard stopped working. That same night, police knocked on his door. The charge was vague, public disruption incitement, flagged by an internal security alert. He was held in a detention center for 36 hours. No lawyer, no explanation, just a steel room and a camera that never blinked. Jasmine clicked to the next slide. It was security footage from a labor rally outside the factory. Malik was there, standing near the edge, holding a paper sign. No chant, no megaphone, just him and a piece of cardboard. In the upper corner of the footage, a red box blinked. His face was highlighted. A label appeared over his head. Behavioral anomaly detected. Pattern match confirmed. The room stiffened. One of the senators leaned forward, visibly disturbed. Jasmine didn't say a word. She let the footage speak. Then she turned back to Malik. Tell us what happened after that. Malik's voice dropped. They didn't beat me. They didn't scream. They just left me in a room and played the same clip on a loop. Me standing there, flagged over and over again, like I was dangerous for just existing. He looked straight at Musk. Your system decided I was a threat before I said anything out loud. Then he looked at Bondi, and your DOJ let it happen. For a moment, the hearing room felt too small, the walls too close, the cameras too quiet. Malik's final line came like a whisper, but it landed like a thunderclap. I didn't shout, I whispered, and that was enough. A silence thicker than any headline settled across the chamber. The scream had started this hearing, but it was the whisper that made it personal. Jasmine folded her hands, not for comfort, but to keep them from shaking. The truth was no longer abstract. It had a face, a voice, and a name. So, what is freedom of speech if an algorithm decides who gets to use it? And worse, what does it say about us if we let it? Malik's final words still echoed in the chamber, though his seat was now empty. His face remained on the screen, frozen in that red AI frame, like a warning label stitched onto the truth. Jasmine didn't look away from it, and neither did the audience watching from across the country. The silence hadn't cracked, it had only hardened. Elon Musk adjusted his collar and leaned toward the mic. His voice was calm, rehearsed, dipped in a language meant for shareholders. We protect our employees from sabotage. That's all this is. We've experienced internal leaks, outside interference, and political-motivated disruptions. These systems exist to maintain order, not target dissent. Jasmine stood slowly, not to argue, but to dismantle. She tapped her tablet once, and a spreadsheet appeared on the monitor behind her. Internal flag logs from Tesla Security. 37 entries in 1 week. Every name on the list was Latino. Every flag marked with the same vague phrase, elevated behavioral risk. Every one of them was assigned a facial threat score without ever speaking a word. She looked directly at Musk. That's not protection, that's programming bias with a badge. Your AI isn't neutral, it's obedient to the same prejudices embedded in every unchecked system designed to keep power comfortable. Musk pressed his lips together, but before he could speak, a voice from the dais cut across the room. Senator Bernie Sanders, not scheduled to speak, leaned in and broke protocol without hesitation. That's not protection, that's profiling, plain and simple, and we all know it. The hearing chamber tensed. Even the cameras took a half-second to adjust. Musk didn't respond. He didn't have to. The silence said enough. Jasmine moved to the next slide. A photo filled the screen. Luis Medina, a factory technician, flagged after asking for an extended bathroom break. He was held for questioning. His badge was revoked. The system cited tone escalation patterns, though he never raised his voice. 2 days later, he was terminated without a hearing. She kept her voice steady. Luis is a father of 2. He's never missed a day of work. He's never been written up. But the algorithm decided his tone, his accent, was too loud to be trusted, so the system erased him. Musk exhaled, his voice lower. Now, these protocols are automated across all facilities. They're not based on race or background. They're designed for consistency. Jasmine didn't blink. Then why is the threat level 3 times higher for Spanish-language communications flagged by your system? Why do names like Wadena, Ortiz, and Alvarez appear more than any other in your own reports? He had no answer. And in that stillness, Jasmine finished the cut. You created rockets to reach Mars, Mr. Musk, but you built software here on Earth that can't tell the difference between a whistleblower and a man begging for fairness. She looked across the room one final time. So, how do you defend capitalism when your silence decides who's allowed to survive? The name came quietly from Jasmine's lips, but it landed like a punch. The clerk called for the next witness, and all eyes shifted toward the rear door of the chamber. For a moment, even the camera operators hesitated. Then he stepped in, tall, gray suit, eyes sharp beneath tired lids. Robert Kessler, former senior counsel at the Department of Justice, 27 years in federal service, resigned 2 months after the noise mitigation directive was approved. Jasmine rose to greet him with a simple nod. He gave her one in return and took the oath with the kind of calm that made people nervous. Please state for the record what your responsibilities were. In February of this year, I was tasked with overseeing internal review of public response frameworks for federal contracts related to social unrest, specifically classification protocols for information deemed disruptive. And did those protocols include content originating from labor protests? Yes. Protest footage, social media threads, whistleblower accounts, anything that risked public. A memo called National Innovation Corridors. Jasmine stepped forward, one hand resting lightly on the table. And what was the language used in the reclassification orders? Kessler didn't blink. Treat protest data as security threats. Accelerate internal suppression where contractor stability is at risk. Language was clear, and it came with initials on every page. PBJ. The inhale inhaled, no one exhaled. Pam Bondi's shoulders didn't move, but her eyes did. For the first time since the hearing began, she didn't look like the woman who'd threatened Jasmine on Fox News. She looked like someone reading a headline written about herself in real time. Jasmine didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. It was Bondi's silence that amplified everything. Do you know if Elon Musk or X Corp had access to these protocols? Kessler nodded once. Yes. They were involved in initial planning discussions. Emails confirm it. One in particular stood out. Sent by Bondi's deputy, copied to Mr. Musk's legal team. It read, "Jasmine Crockett is a problem. We're fixing it." The committee erupted. Chairs scraped. Gasps hit the walls like gunfire. The feed didn't cut away. It zoomed in. Jasmine turned slowly toward Bondi, the former prosecutor, the sitting attorney general, the woman whose entire brand was control. You authorized the system that let machines label fathers as threats. You approved the memo that turned screens into surveillance. And now you're out of places to hide. Bondi didn't respond. Her hands were still, her lips pressed flat, but the corner of her right eye twitched, just once. She blinked. The camera caught it. The nation caught it. And somewhere in every union hall, break room, classroom, and kitchen watching this unfold, people saw it. Power had flinched. What happens when the most powerful person in the room finally runs out of excuses? They stop talking and start trembling. The silence from Bondi's blink hadn't faded. It had calcified. Every breath in the chamber felt like it had to pass through something electric. Jasmine didn't move from her seat, and she didn't have to. The red-lit map still lingered behind her like a wound exposed to daylight. Across America, people leaned closer to their screens. That's when it snapped. "This is a farce." Elon Musk's voice cracked through the chamber like shattering glass. He slammed a palm on the table, then stood so fast his chair toppled backward with a loud metallic crash. Papers flew. One mic fell sideways, the sound peaking in every headset. A cameraman jolted, refocusing his frame momentarily, askew, capturing Musk's flushed face mid-eruption like a mugshot with motion.
The silence from the last revelation hadn't even faded when Jasmine Crockett stepped forward again, this time slower, sharper, like a surgeon reaching for her next scalpel. She didn't smile. She didn't blink. Her eyes scanned the room the way a storm scans the horizon, searching for weakness. Then she held up a simple white envelope, unmarked except for one thing, the Department of Justice seal, faint and off-center, like it had been copied in haste. No return address, no explanation, just one phrase scribbled on the flap. "Jasmine," she said into the mic, her voice a low, chilling whisper. It read, "Project Whisper." She slid open the envelope with one motion and pulled out a slim flash drive. The screen behind her flickered, then stabilized on a presentation marked "Confidential, Eyes Only." The title bled onto the screen in black bureaucratic font, "Project Whisper, Phase 2." But it was the subtitle that sent a chill through the chamber, "Narrative Suppression and Domestic Harmonization Protocols." She clicked to the first slide. Bullet points, but these weren't ordinary talking points. They were silencers in plain English. Reclassified domestic labor unrest as anti-destabilization, flag protest organizers as narrative contaminants, preempt congressional exposure via media guidance protocols, designated threat rep, Jasmine Crockett, TX. Musk stiffened. Pam Bondi's knuckles whitened around her pen. The phrase designated threat hung in the air like a noose made of ink. Jasmine didn't turn around. She just spoke. You weren't trying to stop violence. You were trying to stop volume. Because when voices grow too loud, they echo through these walls. And echoes can't be ignored. The room didn't move. Cameras zoomed tighter. Somewhere in the gallery, a spectator quietly cried, but Jasmine kept going. I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm asking you to listen to one of your own. She pressed play. A grainy video appeared. The face was blurred, the voice distorted, but the truth was unmistakable. I worked under Bondi's digital oversight team, she said. I saw the slide decks, the redacted orders. Project Whisper wasn't surveillance, it was sabotage. They weren't watching threats, they were manufacturing them. And Crockett, she scared them. They said she had empathy momentum, that if she got traction, she could unravel the whole operation. They used one word over and over: neutralize. The screen froze on a still frame, a DOJ memo with a single closing signature, PJB. Bondi didn't speak, but her silence screamed. The chamber clock ticked audibly louder than it should have. Jasmine turned to her. You signed this. You stamped it with your initials. You funneled justice into a chokehold because it made your donors nervous. Bondi opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Jasmine stepped forward. You came for me with algorithms and whispers. You tried to label compassion as chaos. But here's the problem with trying to silence someone who was never afraid of losing a seat. She paused just enough for every American watching to lean in. I don't serve the powerful. I serve the unheard. The screen went black. So when power attacks transparency, who really has something to hide? And in that moment, the question wasn't rhetorical anymore. It was a mirror, and every eye in the chamber had to look. The doors hadn't even closed behind Jasmine Crockett when the ground began to hum, not from the engines of broadcast trucks or the camera shutters clicking in frenzy, but from thousands of voices rising in unison just beyond the marble walls. The Capitol steps, normally a place for solemn speeches and staged photos, had become something else entirely. They pulsed with bodies, with banners, with noise that refused to be repackaged as disruption. Capitol Police lined the perimeter, unsure whether they were guarding a building or trying to hold back a tidal wave. Phones were raised high, so were fists, so were truths. The hashtags were no longer trends, they were declarations. Noise is Pain had crossed 80 million mentions in under an hour. Hashtag Crockett Live wasn't just a tag, it was a signal. Jasmine walked toward the exit with the same calm she entered with. No grand gestures, no victory speech. Just that steel focus, as if history was waiting outside, and she didn't want to keep it waiting. Bondi remained in the hearing room, frozen. Musk whispered furiously to his attorneys, but outside was where the verdict was already being delivered. The doors opened, the crowd erupted. Reporters surged forward, shouting questions like gunfire. Will there be criminal referrals? Did Bondi break federal law? Is Musk going to testify again? But Jasmine didn't stop. She didn't slow down. She stepped onto the Capitol stairs like a conductor stepping onto the podium of an orchestra made of anger, grief, and hope. And the symphony had already begun. A young girl held up a sign. My mom lost her job for saying she was in pain. Beside her, a man in a faded Tesla uniform chanted, "We were workers, they made us warnings." Across the lawn, someone projected Jasmine's closing words from the hearing onto the wall of the Supreme Court. I served the unheard. She raised one hand, not to silence the crowd, but to steady it. Then finally, she spoke. Justice wasn't silenced today. That was all. No more, no less. And somehow that one sentence felt louder than every chant echoing across Washington. It wasn't bravado. It was confirmation. It was the kind of line that doesn't just trend. It lives. She descended the steps, slowly, pausing only once to look over her shoulder, not at the cameras, but at the building behind her, as if it were daring it to try and mute what had already escaped its walls. The protest surged again. Signs waved, sirens howled faintly in the distance. But inside the chaos, there was clarity. Something had shifted, not just in politics, but in perception. Because if one woman could break a silence this loud, what could millions do? And who, after watching this,
would dare try to quiet them again. The fallout didn't wait, it detonated. By the dawn of the next morning, headlines weren't measured in inches, they were measured in billions. Tesla stock hemorrhaged $46 billion in market value before the closing bell. Investors flooded newsrooms with anonymous tips, distancing themselves from decisions made at the top. And at the Department of Justice, Pam Bondi's name vanished from the official directory. The internal memo leaked minutes later, suspended pending investigation. Executive order signed at 6:02 a.m. The machine had recoiled, not with integrity, but with instinct. A predator backing away only because the prey finally roared back. Jasmine didn't gloat. She didn't tour the talk shows. When CNN called requesting an exclusive, her reply was brief, almost surgical. Let them speak first. Let the workers be heard before the headlines rewrite their pain. It wasn't performative. It was surgical humility, disarming, real, and unlike anything the morning news panels were used to scripting. Outside a shuttered Tesla plant in Nevada, Malik Hayes stood before a crowd of workers and held up his old badge. I lost everything trying to say the truth. And she's the only one who heard us. Not the unions, not the networks. Her. Someone in the crowd shouted her name, then another. It spread like a chorus, building momentum. Not for celebration, but for recognition. Not of Jasmine alone, but of the fact that silence had been cracked. And once cracked, it bleeds. Inside the Capitol, the Oversight Committee called an emergency closed-door session. It wasn't about next steps. It was about damage control, about plugging the holes in a system that had prided itself on being watertight, even if that meant drowning people below the surface. Meanwhile, Jasmine sat alone in her office, staring at a whiteboard covered in names, workers, whistleblowers, families. Not one was crossed off, because to her, this wasn't resolution, it was revelation. And revelations don't end movements, they start them. A staffer entered quietly with a stack of letters, most handwritten, postmarked from all 50 states. One had no return address, just a sentence scribbled on the back. You tore off the mask. Don't stop now. She read it twice, then placed it next to her laptop right beside a sticky note that said, Lena, Malik, USB 14. Outside, the wind picked up. Protesters still camped near the Capitol began to chant, not out of anger, this time, but clarity. So what do after you tear off the mask? You don't just walk away. You let the world see what's been breathing beneath it the whole time. And if you're Jasmine Crockett, you light the next match. The sun hit Austin like a spotlight, cutting through the haze, as if the sky itself had cleared its throat. 10,000 people packed the Capitol steps. They didn't come for slogans. They came for something raw, something that couldn't be muted, pixelated, or renamed. They came because silence had collapsed, and Jasmine Crockett was the one who cracked it. She stepped onto the makeshift stage, not like a politician, but like a witness. No podium, no teleprompter, just a handheld mic and eyes that memorized too much pain to need a script. The crowd didn't cheer first. They just looked, held their breath like they knew whatever came next wasn't a speech. It was a reckoning. Beside her stood Lena Torres. The wind pushed lightly at the small-framed ultrasound she held now, enclosed in glass like a relic. The image inside, a tiny shape frozen in grayscale. But it wasn't the image that made the crowd quiet. It was the space beside it. A post-it note, handwritten, no productivity excuse granted, Tesla memo paper, signed and dated. Lena didn't speak. She didn't have to. Her silence screamed louder than the chants echoing down Congress Avenue. Jasmine looked out, eyes scanning the sea of faces. Union workers, nurses, college students, factory families. Some held up printed screenshots of DOJ memos. Others carried handmade signs that read, "If noise